I was hired by a socialite to get proof that her CEO fiancé was cheating. So I staked out the CEO's daily route, tailing him relentlessly. I finally got my shot after getting a job as a hotel waitress, snapping a few intimate photos of the CEO with another woman. Bad news, I forgot to turn off the flash. Run. The next day, the CEO himself hauled me into his car. I was ready to talk my way out of it, but he cut right to the chase. Whatever she's paying you, I'll double it. I smirked. I don't know about that. I have professional ethics. 10 times. I pulled out my phone and a card reader, my smile turning syrupy sweet. So, what'll it be? Venmo, Zelle, or do you take card? But then he leaned in close, grabbed my hand, and asked. Can't you just charge it to my face? Hey, Gina. Steve just left for the office. It was 9 a.m. sharp. I was parked in my gourmet tater tot truck, staking out the CEO Steve's daily commute and reporting back to my client. Gina's lazy voice came through the phone. Stay on him. I need proof he's cheating today. I nodded, my voice firm. You got it. I fired up the engine and tailed Steve's Rolls-Royce, flooring it all the way to the S-Corp tower. I refuse to believe the CEO of a massive corporation is some kind of monk. He has to have a secret girlfriend somewhere, right? The job came to me 2 weeks ago. A client wanted me to follow her fiancé and catch him cheating so she could break off their engagement. The client was the heiress to the G Corporation, who had been engaged to Steve, the head of S-Corp, for the last 6 months. In the restaurant, she cried while telling me her story. I already have a boyfriend. So what if he's a little broke right now? He's going to make it big one day. What's so great about that Steve guy, anyway? He's a total iceberg. He's a psycho. I don't like him, and he doesn't like me, so why did he agree to the engagement? He said he'd find a way to break it off with me, but it's been half a year and still nothing. I can't wait anymore. If he's going to drag this out, then I'm not playing nice. I listened, handed her tissues, and cursed Steve for being a jerk who doesn't keep his word. Finally, Gina offered me $15,000 to get a picture of Steve in a scandal. With that, she could go to her parents and call the whole thing off. 15 grand. My eyes lit up. A G Corp heiress, indeed. Generous. For $15,000, I puffed out my chest and promised her. Don't you worry, Gina. I will absolutely make sure you two can break up. The annoying thing was, this Steve guy was a total workaholic. For 2 weeks, it was just home and the office, back and forth. He was more predictable than a rooster at dawn. But for 15 grand, I was all in. Disguised as a humble tater tot vendor, who would ever suspect me? I slammed on the gas to keep up. Half an hour later, Steve stepped out of his Rolls-Royce, adjusted his impeccably tailored suit, and strode into the building. I parked under a tree, watching him from a distance. I'd been looking at him for 2 weeks, and damn, he was still handsome. How could Gina not like him? If he were my fiancé, I'd pounce on him in a heartbeat. No, wait. I'm broke as a joke. How can I be fantasizing about a big shot CEO? Getting that 15,000 is what matters. I casually fried some tots, glancing at my watch. 11 o'clock. Almost time. Sure enough, a few moments later, a cheerful, chubby girl came running out of the S-Corp tower, looking around excitedly before heading straight for my truck. 1 large order of tater tots, please. I put on a big smile. You got it. The girl took the tots from me and popped one in her mouth, practically jumping with joy. Yes. This is the stuff. Nobody makes them as good as you. She winced from the heat but kept stuffing them in her mouth. I said proudly, of course. Even your CEO would have to admit my tots are the best. But the girl just waved her hand. Our CEO is super picky. He's probably never even had something like this. I nodded. True enough. Guys born with a silver spoon probably have a personal chef for every meal. Back when I had money, I was all about lobster and steak. Tater tots? What are those? Watching her eat, I started casually probing for information. So, does your CEO have any other hobbies? Besides work, I mean. The girl finished her last tot, licking her lips. Our CEO is incredibly disciplined. A total workaholic. As for hobbies, a low-level employee like me would never know. All we know is his work schedule. Schedule. I narrowed my eyes. A schedule could lead to something interesting. I quickly grabbed a bottle of water, twisted it open, and handed it to her, feigning curiosity. A company that big, your CEO must be swamped, right? Working around the clock. She took the water, took a huge gulp, and nodded vigorously. Totally. Then, before I could ask anything else, she started counting on her fingers. Today, a 5-hour meeting. Tomorrow, a bidding presentation. The day after, a new product launch. And the day after that, there's a gala. A gala. My eyes lit up. At a big gala, men usually need a date, right? A date would have to be someone he's close to. A guy like Steve wouldn't just bring his secretary, would he? In my excitement, I blurted out, "Where's the gala being held?" The second the words left my mouth, I wanted to slap myself. What if she got suspicious? Luckily, this girl was straightforward and didn't think much of it. After a moment's thought, she told me directly. I think it's at the Avalon Hotel. The Avalon Hotel. I committed it to memory. The girl quickly checked her clothes for stains, spritzed on some perfume, and did a little twirl. You'll be here tomorrow, right? I leaned against my truck. Yep, I'll be here. With that, she scurried back into the building. The Avalon Hotel, huh? I stood in front of the Avalon Hotel, looking at the now hiring sign in the window, and couldn't help but grin. I'd barely set up the bait, and the fish were already biting. It was like fate was on my side. I tore the sign off the window and walked up to the front desk. Hi, I'm here to apply for a server position. The receptionist gave me a slightly surprised look. I asked, confused, are you not hiring anymore? She pointed at my face. You're really pretty. Why not apply for a front desk job? I immediately waved my hand, feigning embarrassment. Oh, you're too kind, really. After a bit of schmoozing with the receptionist, I was sent to HR. I was hired on the spot. Life, huh? Smooth sailing in the small things, only to trip you up on the big ones. Then came the training. On the third day, I was officially in my hotel server uniform, waiting for Steve to arrive. I was dying to see what kind of date he'd bring. The gala started after 2 p.m. Steve arrived in a black, exquisitely tailored suit. The black diamond cufflinks on his sleeves gave him an air of sophisticated abstinence. So hot. Just as he stood there, a pair of long, elegant hands emerged from the Rolls-Royce behind him, followed by a woman in a gorgeous gown. Steve smiled slightly, turning back to help her out. What a beautiful, classy woman. She expertly looped her arm through his, and they exchanged a smile before walking in together. And me? While I was drooling over the stunning couple, I didn't forget to snap pictures like crazy. 15 grand, 15 grand, 15 grand. I clutched my phone, carrying a tray of drinks, and weaved through the crowd of socialites. I kept my eyes glued on Steve and his date. His date saw something amusing and threw her head back, laughing as she spoke to him. Steve's usual cold expression was gone, replaced by a gentle, doting smile as he bent down to listen to her. They were so close. This was my chance. Click. I was so focused that someone bumped into me, nearly knocking the phone out of my hand. The money shot. His date pinched Steve's ear. Click. A loud snap and a bright flash went off. Everyone turned to look at me, confused. The smile on Steve's face vanished, instantly replaced by a cold, hard stare. That icy look sent a shiver down my spine. I glanced at him in a panic, and taking advantage of the crowd and their delayed reactions, I bolted out of the hotel. As I ran, I stripped off the hotel uniform. Strangely, no one chased after me. They probably hadn't processed what happened yet. I stuffed the uniform into a trash can, hopped onto my food truck, and sped away. Gina, I sent you the pictures. Check your phone. On the other end of the line, I could hear Gina talking to a man, her laughter spilling through the phone. The $15,000 is in your account. Hearing the money was in, I was so excited I felt like my truck could take flight. I thanked her profusely. Thanks, Gina. Call me if you ever need anything else. She agreed, satisfied. But a second later, her tone shifted. You know, these pictures are intimate, but they're not quite a smoking gun. I can't definitively prove he's cheating with these. How about this? I'll add another $7,500. You go stake out his house. I bet he'll take this woman home with him after the gala. Another $7,500? My heart felt like it was going to leap out of my chest. Rich people really are something else. After a lot of effort, I managed to borrow a food delivery uniform from a friend and settled into a stakeout in the bushes outside Steve's mansion. I waited until it was dark, but I didn't see a soul. I slapped my forehead in frustration. Of course. After a gala, who in their right mind would wait until they got home? They'd just get the presidential suite at the hotel. Just as I was debating whether to relocate, Steve's Rolls-Royce slowly pulled up. He's here. But he's alone. Where's his date? Maybe she's coming later to avoid being seen. Rich people are all about privacy, after all. I stroked my chin, feeling pretty confident in my analysis. I waited until 10 o'clock, having brushed my teeth in the bushes, and still, no one. 11 o'clock. All the lights in the mansion went out. What was going on? Did they already finish their business at the hotel? Whatever. I'll just sleep first. I found a comfortable spot against a tree and prepared to doze off. Seriously, do I have it easy? Camping out in the street for $7,500, getting eaten alive by mosquitoes. Wake up. Wake up, Olivia, wake up. Someone was shaking my shoulder. I jolted awake and started to fall off the tree branch. Luckily, the person caught me just in time. I wiped my face and finally got a clear look at him. A man in a black suit was crouching on the ground, smiling at me. I screamed. A ghost. The man remained perfectly calm. Olivia, our Steve would like a word with you in the car. It's cold on the ground, you'll get sick sleeping out here all night. It felt like I'd been struck by lightning. I cupped my ear, pretending I hadn't heard. Who's looking for me? The man, ever patient, repeated himself. Steve. Steve. I panicked, wishing the ground would swallow me whole. How did they find me hiding here? This is just my luck. I gave the man a sheepish grin. Right, of course. I stood up, and then I bolted. 30 seconds later, I was sitting obediently in the luxurious Rolls-Royce, nervously wringing my hands. Steve's dark eyes met mine. He turned on his phone and held it in front of me. Olivia, quite the professional, aren't you? A few seemingly intimate photos, and you've got Gina convinced I'm a man of questionable character? I looked at the pictures I'd taken yesterday, and the smile I was trying to fake froze on my face. I turned my head away, wanting to punch myself. Gina was rich and beautiful, but clearly not the sharpest tool in the shed. She just threw the photos at him without any kind of plan. Right now, even the plush leather seats felt like they were full of needles. I couldn't sit still. It was like sitting on pins and needles, with daggers at my back. I wrung my hands nervously, forcing a pained smile. Steve. It's all a misunderstanding. A total misunderstanding. It's just that you were dragging your feet on breaking up with Gina, and she was getting anxious. So she resorted to this creative solution. Steve rested his chin on his hand, staring at me intently. His voice was deep. Oh. This creative solution being a cheap trick? Hearing that, my slight guilt evaporated, and I immediately got defensive, pointing at the photos to argue my case. What's so cheap about it? If you were a stand-up guy, keeping to yourself, I could stake you out for a year and a half and not get a single shot. After saying my piece, I couldn't help but glance at Steve's expression. I expected the typical CEO rage, but instead, he just chuckled, leaned in, and asked softly. Couldn't the person in these photos just be a family member? His handsome face was suddenly right in front of mine. My heart skipped a beat, and my face instantly turned beet red. I quickly pinched the back of my hand, silently scolding myself. Olivia, you're already this broke. When are you going to kick this habit of fawning over handsome faces? I stammered, trying to come up with a retort, but in the next second, Steve's smile vanished. He sat back up straight and said casually, The woman in these photos is my aunt. My jaw dropped. I shook my head vigorously, refusing to believe it. No way he has an aunt that young. Men's words are nothing but lies. The next second, Steve dialed a number. Auntie, he said into the phone. Did you get home okay last night? Are you well rested? A voice came from the other end. Exhausted. Don't ever call me for one of those things again. Don't you have a fiancé? Call her. Call her. Steve shot me a smug look, then said, Not for long. My face was so stiff I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. A moment of carelessness leads to a lifetime of regret. And just like that, I was caught. Seeing Steve tilt his head to look at me, I quickly pasted on a fawning smile. Heh, Steve, you see. You're a big man, you can forgive a little person like me, right? Could you just let me go? Steve crossed his long legs, casually propping one over the other. He looked up at me, a faint smile playing on his lips. Whatever Gina's paying you, I'll double it. I froze on the spot. I thought that smile was my death sentence, but he was actually asking me to betray my client. Didn't he just call this a cheap trick? What a hypocrite. The true face of a ruthless businessman. As a person with professional ethics, I had to refuse. Steve, I have my professional ethics. I would never betray Gina. Besides, she was head over heels for her boyfriend. I could get 1,000 damning photos of them without even trying. Real intimate stuff, too. I looked at Steve with a determined expression. But he just switched his legs and said softly, 10 times. 10 times. $150,000. My brain was spinning, calculating my debts. 150 grand would wipe out a third of what I owe. It was a deal that made sense no matter how I looked at it. I was torn. On one side, 150 grand. On the other, my loyalty to Gina. Steve wasn't in a hurry. His slender, well-defined fingers tapped a light rhythm on his knee. I squeezed my eyes shut. I'm sorry, Gina. People do what they have to do to survive. I have to sacrifice you. Maybe this will be the push you need to finally get your happy ending. The next second, I pulled out my phone and a card reader from my bag, a fawning smile on my face. So, Steve, what'll it be? Venmo, Zelle, or do you take card? Steve casually pulled a black card from his wallet. No PIN required. I took it, stroking it lovingly. A black card. The texture really is different. Just like that, I had 150 grand. Getting out of the car, I felt like I was walking on air. Steve didn't forget to remind me, Olivia, I want results in a week. I nodded like a bobblehead, even giving him an okay sign. To make supervision easier, let's add each other on social media, shall we? I blinked. Is this what CEOs are like now? Have to have their hands in everything? Still, I scanned Steve's QR code. His profile picture was a stray cat. You know, that cat looked a little familiar. Don't let the iceberg face fool you. Turns out the CEO has a soft spot. I waved goodbye to Steve. He actually returned the gesture and even asked, "Where are you headed, Olivia? I can give you a lift." I quickly shook my head, but I couldn't help but admire him. What a CEO. Even his manners are top-notch. He really didn't have to be so perfect. Hopping onto my tater tot truck, I couldn't resist turning back and asking, "Steve, care for some tots?" Click. The car door shut. I scoffed. What, too good for tater tots? Gina, it turned out, was a total romantic. She was always running off to see her boyfriend. Before Steve even had a chance to check in, I had already sent him dozens of photos. This stuff was way more explosive than what I got on Steve. One look and Gina's goose was cooked. I stared at the photos for a second, then put my phone down and clasped my hands together as if in prayer. Oh, Gina, please don't hate me. I'm just trying to make a living. I looked at the 150 grand in my account and stroked my phone wistfully. It wasn't even warm yet, and I already had to give it away. I silently cried for 3 seconds. 2 days later, Steve suddenly sent me an address with a message. The Willow Creek Grill. Get here now. My head was full of questions. What did he want me for? Didn't we already settle everything? Before I could even process my confusion, a call came through. Gina. My heart sank, but I answered. A torrent of anger flooded my ear. Olivia, you money-grubbing traitor. How could you betray me? I held the phone far away from my ear, wincing. I couldn't help but pout. The sweet, lovely heiress was terrifying when she was angry. The Willow Creek Grill. Get over here now. I quickly figured out what was going on. Steve had taken the photos to Gina. He really was a man of action, leaving me no room to maneuver. I ran my hands through my hair in frustration and resigned myself to my fate. I took a cab to the Willow Creek Grill. These were people I couldn't afford to offend. If I couldn't fight them, I could at least grovel. The moment I walked into the restaurant, Gina glared at me and slammed her hand on the table. Olivia, how could you betray me? Steve politely pulled out a chair for me, gesturing for me to sit. I shakily sat down next to him, a clear line drawn between me and Gina on the other side of the table. I kept my head down in shame, listening to Gina tear into me. She was really getting into it when Steve suddenly cut in. Gina, Olivia was acting on my request. Please be more polite. I whipped my head around to look at Steve. A godsend. He was actually explaining things for me. Oh my God, I could cry. This just made Gina angrier. I hired her first. She didn't just betray me, she stabbed me in the back. Hearing that, I buried my head even deeper. Gina wasn't wrong. But the next second, Steve calmly took a sip of water and said, "That just means you didn't offer her enough money." Gina's face turned red with anger. She shot me a glare, crossed her arms, and said, "So, what are we going to do about this? If I can't break off this engagement, I'm taking it out on Olivia." I jerked my head up, pointing at myself in disbelief. I stammered, not daring to speak, and let out a long sigh. What does this have to do with me? I was just doing a job for money. Talk about being caught in the crossfire. Seeing my panic, Steve actually reached out and patted the back of my hand, silently telling me to relax. The moment our skin touched, it felt like an electric shock. My eyes widened as I looked at him. Did he have to be so familiar? Dude, we're not that close, okay? This kind of unintentional flirting is more than I can handle. But Steve just smiled at me. A gentle knife, cutting me to the core. I covered my face and ducked my head like a scolded shrimp. Steve pulled his gaze away and looked at Gina, pushing the photos toward her. He said softly, "You can break off the engagement, but you'll have to be the one to light the fuse." Gina frowned, about to cross her arms and argue, but Steve laid out his terms. Once it's done, I'll invest in your boyfriend's company and help him get it off the ground. That way, you'll have a good explanation for your family. Wouldn't you rather end up with a successful boyfriend? I looked up at Steve, full of admiration. As expected of the youngest CEO of Shun Corp. His ability to manipulate people was simply irresistible. As predicted, Gina was tempted. After a moment of consideration, she bit her lip, pushed the photos back, and said, "Fine, it's a deal. But you better keep your word, Steve." Steve extended his hand with a smile. "A pleasure doing business with you." Gina pursed her lips and shook his hand. I blinked, looking between them. "That's it?" Sensing my unease, Steve added. "This has nothing to do with Olivia. You understand that, right, Gina?" Gina glanced at me, then said, "Of course. As long as you keep your promise, Steve. Goodbye." With that, Gina grabbed her bag and stormed out. I sat awkwardly next to Steve, not sure if I should stay or go. I jolted upright when Steve finally spoke. I forced a smile and said, "Steve, is there anything else you need?" Steve studied me, his eyes deep and captivating, as if he could drown a person in them. He cleared his throat and said lightly, "After Gina and I break up, my family will immediately start pressuring me into arranged marriages or blind dates. I was wondering if Olivia would be willing to play the part of my girlfriend? My grandmother is getting old, and this is her greatest wish. If I have a girlfriend, it will put her at ease. It will also shut my family up." My smile froze on my face. I tilted my head, asking in confusion, "Steve, are you serious?" Steve nodded and made a generous offer. $15,000 a month. Is that price satisfactory to you, Olivia? What would I have to do? Hearing the price, I was immediately interested. Steve thought for a moment, then said lightly, "Whatever a girlfriend does, Olivia, you do." I clutched my chest and said righteously, "I'm for hire, but my body is not." Steve chuckled and quickly clarified, "Of course. $15,000 a month." I started doing the math in my head. If Steve didn't get married for a year or two, and I took on some side gigs, I could pay off my debts in no time. It was a great deal no matter how I looked at it. I looked at Steve. He had a serious expression on his face. He wouldn't be lying, right? He's the boss of a huge company, after all. I'm in. Fortune favors the bold. In a burst of excitement, I grabbed Steve's hand and slapped it firmly. Deal. Less than 3 days later, the news broke on my phone. The CEO of S Corp and the heiress of G Corp had called off their engagement. I nearly spit out the mouthful of noodles I was eating. That was fast. The next second, my phone rang. Seeing who it was, I fumbled to answer. "Steve, what can I do for you?" Steve's clear voice came through the phone. "Olivia, I'm taking you to my family's house tonight at 6. Please get ready." "Your house?" I asked, confused. Steve explained calmly, "I told my family that Gina has always had a boyfriend, and that I met someone I really like, which is why we broke off the engagement. And now my family wants to meet you." The sudden request was so shocking that the chopsticks in my other hand almost slipped from my grasp, clattering back into the bowl. Steve's voice on the other end was questioning. "Are you busy?" I quickly agreed. I'm free. You're my employer now." "Of course, I'm always ready." Steve hummed in agreement, then said, "I'll pick you up at 4. He was about to hang up when I quickly stopped him. Wait, Steve, do you even know where I live?" Steve said coolly, "Of course." I couldn't help but pout. Ugh, capitalism. A person can't have any privacy anymore. I glanced at the time and sprinted to the bathroom. I was ready by 3:50. Steve was already waiting for me downstairs. I threw on my shoes and ran down. Can't keep the client waiting. That would be unprofessional. Steve stood calmly by his car, wearing a pair of silver-rimmed glasses today. His hair was slicked back, and he was dressed in a black suit. Paired with his stoic aura, he looked exceptionally like a handsome villain. I suddenly felt like I should be running downstairs and throwing myself into his arms, playing out some dramatic scene between a CEO and a Cinderella. Like I should be hiking up a ball gown and running toward the most beautiful flower of spring. Of course, I stopped dead in my tracks just before I would have crashed into him, giving him a sycophantic wave. "Steve, you're here so early." Steve nodded with a smile. "Naturally. I can't keep my girlfriend waiting." I froze on the spot, stammering, "Gee, girlfriend?" Steve looked smug. "Is there a problem?" I patted my chest and quickly smiled. "No problem, no problem. You're the client, you call the shots." Steve nodded with a smile, then said, "In that case, can I call you Olivia? And you can just call me Steve. It sounds more intimate." I quickly agreed. But the next second, Steve looked down at me. "Olivia." His deep, rich voice sent a shiver down my spine, making my heart tremble. I felt a wave of unease and quickly turned my head away, trying to calm my racing heart. What was he doing? Was he flirting without realizing it? Steve nonchalantly pulled his gaze away and extended his arm. "I'm counting on you, Olivia." I felt a surge of purpose. I nodded firmly, bravely took Steve's arm, and got into his luxury car. Steve didn't take me straight to his house. First, he took me to a mall. To go into battle, you need the right gear. My usual student-like attire would probably get me kicked out before I even set foot in his home. Steve took me to an understated luxury boutique. The moment the sales associates saw Steve, their faces lit up with sycophantic smiles. I watched them secretly, guessing I probably looked the same way when I saw this walking ATM. Who doesn't love the face of money? But the next second, when they saw me next to Steve, their expressions soured. They looked me up and down with disdain and mockery. What the hell? Don't they know the saying, you don't kick the dog of a powerful master? Their change in attitude was lightning fast. Maybe it was the green tea I had this morning, but I couldn't help but get a little catty. I walked up, linked my arm with Steve's, and said, "Steve, honey, I want that purse. And that dress is nice, too. And those shoes, I like those too." Steve was stunned for a moment, then seemed to understand. He glanced at the shocked sales associates, chuckled, and playfully tapped my nose. "If you like them, we'll buy them all." He then turned to the still dazed associates and instructed, "Please find the right sizes for my girlfriend's shoes and dress. She'd like to try them on." The associate quickly stammered, Oh, of course, sir. One moment." As soon as she was gone, I snatched my hand back and rolled my eyes dramatically at the ceiling. I didn't think he'd notice, but he did. He leaned down and asked, "Not happy?" I waved my hand, completely baffled. We're all just people trying to make a living. Do they really have to be so snobby? Steve chuckled and patted my head. "Olivia, you're still as genuine as ever." I didn't understand what he meant by that. "What?" I asked, confused. Steve just pressed his lips together and didn't answer. Steve's family had already prepared a dinner party. When I got out of the car, Steve thoughtfully offered me his hand. I froze, looking at his smiling face, and uncomfortably placed my hand in his. Steve really was too much of a gentleman. He leaned in close to my ear and asked, "Is it okay if I hold your hand?" I nodded quickly. Of course. The moment Steve's fingers intertwined with mine, the warmth of his palm sent a jolt through me, like an electric shock. My face couldn't help but burn. Steve looked at me, confused. I quickly forced a smile. It's nothing. Just a little nervous, heh. Oh, God. I'm so pathetic. It's just holding hands. It's not like I'm losing a limb. Plus, he's the big boss. I'm not just getting paid, I'm getting a little something extra. It's a win-win. Hand in hand, Steve and I walked into the grand living room. Steve's grandmother, who was sitting on the sofa, stood up excitedly. Steve led me over to her. "Grandma, this is Olivia, my girlfriend." I quickly greeted her. "Hello, Grandma." Grandma took my hand, beaming. "Hello, hello," she said over and over. She was so happy, she was like a little kid. I couldn't help but smile. Before coming here, I had imagined all sorts of difficult scenarios, but I never expected to be treated with such warmth. It seemed they was really worried about Steve's love life. The fact that he was even willing to date was a miracle to them. Grandma held my hand and sat me down on the sofa, repeating, "Good girl, such a good girl." After all these years, Steve has finally seen the light. I thought I'd die before I ever saw him get married. As she said this, she started to tear up. I was a bit flustered. How did she go from smiling to crying so quickly? Her mood swings were a mystery. I quickly tried to console her. Steve is so wonderful. How could he possibly have trouble finding a girlfriend? Steve stood to the side, frowning, but didn't say a word. Grandma shot him a glare and complained to me, "You don't know. He's 28 this year, and he just refuses to date or get married. We've introduced him to so many girls, but he turns them all down. He's as stubborn as a mule." So stubborn I thought he might be gay. But he couldn't even bring home a guy. He's not ugly. Not dating at his age, all he knows is work. He's sick. When he dies, who's going to run this huge company? Grandma's spirited rant, filled with surprisingly modern concerns, left me completely stunned. Steve looked mortified. He frowned slightly. "Grandma, I have Olivia now." Grandma just huffed at him, then turned back to me with a loving smile. "Yes, yes. Olivia is such a good girl. We don't care about family background. As long as you two truly love each other, we support you 100%. As she spoke, she even raised her hand to show her determination. I couldn't help but laugh. "Grandma, you're just too cute. My parents died a long time ago, and I haven't been around elderly people in years." This warm scene moved me. I was a little envious of Steve, to have someone love him and care for him so much. Fate is always kinder to some people, giving them good families, good looks, good minds, and endless love from others. And to others, fate is particularly cruel. Grandma enthusiastically introduced me to all the relatives. For a while, the atmosphere was quite pleasant. The huge living room was filled with laughter. I sat next to Grandma, with a smiling, gentle Steve behind me, and I cherished this moment of warmth that didn't belong to me. But the next second, a sharp voice came from upstairs, and everyone's expression instantly changed. Well, so this is the girlfriend Steve found. I wonder which family's young lady she is. I don't know if it was just me, but the moment Grandma heard the voice, her face fell, and she frowned slightly. Steve greeted the woman coming down the stairs. "Sister-in-law." My gut told me this woman was trouble. I stood up stiffly and followed Steve's lead. "Hello, sister-in-law." But the woman just looked me over, a dismissive expression on her face. She ignored my greeting and said to Steve, "Steve, dear, why are you bringing just any riff-raff home? If you ask me, she's not even as good as the Goo Girl." I rolled my eyes so hard they almost got stuck. Seriously? A personal attack right off the bat? My temper was flaring, and I couldn't stand it. I was about to fire back, but then I remembered I was playing the part of Steve's girlfriend, and I forced myself to swallow my anger. Just as I did, Steve leaned in and whispered in my ear, "That's my uncle's son's wife. She always looks down her nose at people. Sometimes she even pisses off Grandma. You don't have to put up with her. If you're not happy, just talk back." I turned to him in surprise. "Really?" Steve nodded. Don't worry. If the sky falls, I'll hold it up. All right, then. If that's the case, I can't hold back my temper anymore. I've never been a lady, and I've never liked being taken advantage of. Even if I'm just here for dinner, I'm not going to pretend to be some prim and proper debutante. I'm taking Steve's money to do a job for him, not her. Why should I take her crap? So, I gave her a small smile and said, "Just woke up, sister-in-law. Did you forget to brush your teeth? Your breath is foul." Everyone was clearly not expecting me to be so direct. The expressions on their faces were priceless. The living room fell so silent you could hear a pin drop. The sister-in-law was obviously not expecting me to clap back like that. Her face changed instantly, and she pointed at me, shouting, "Steve, where did you find such a rude thing? What do you even see in her?" I was about to open my mouth, but Steve suddenly wrapped an arm around my waist, pulling me into his embrace. "Olivia is straightforward, strong, and kind. She's resilient. Most importantly, she never looks down on people. She respects everyone." Steve's deep voice echoed through the living room. I stared at him, stunned. His words of praise swirled around me, and my eyes started to well up. My heart wouldn't stop racing. Oh no. This is what it feels like to fall for someone. "Well said, Steve, well said." Grandma clapped, her eyes full of approval for me and Steve. The sister-in-law was furious. Her face contorted as she looked at Grandma. "Grandma, you're taking this girl's side too?" Grandma snorted and scolded her, "I think she's better than you. Any girl Steve likes must be a good one. From now on, if you can't say anything nice, just keep your mouth shut. It's annoying to listen to you, and I can't be bothered." Grandma shot her an irritated look. The sister-in-law glanced around at everyone, then stomped her foot in frustration. "You're all ganging up on me." Then she ran back upstairs. After what had just happened, I looked at Grandma, embarrassed. "I'm so sorry, Grandma. I was so rude just now." Grandma waved her hand dismissively. "I like your straightforward personality. You don't hide anything." She was in the wrong anyway. She's always been sharp-tongued and mean. We're all tired of dealing with her. It's good that she got a taste of her own medicine today. I nodded quickly. Grandma was really great. She didn't look down on me at all. No wonder Steve turned out so well with her raising him. After dinner, Steve personally drove me to the second event of the evening, a get-together with his friends. I'm not used to wearing high heels, and after a whole day in them, my ankles were killing me. I was stumbling as I walked, and I nearly twisted my ankle going up a set of stairs. If Steve hadn't been quick enough to catch me, I probably would have ended up flat on my face. I looked down, rubbing my foot, when Steve's concerned voice came from above. "Are you okay, Olivia?" I quickly looked up and waved my hands. I'm fine. Just lost my balance, ha ha ha." I'd never admit that I'm not used to wearing heels. But it was like Steve could read my mind. He suddenly swept me up into his arms. The sudden feeling of being lifted off the ground startled me. I quickly wrapped my arms around his neck for security. I could feel the warmth of Steve's large hands through my thin dress. The sensation made my heart flutter. I blushed as I looked up and met Steve's gentle, yet intense, gaze. "Steve, where are you taking me?" Steve smiled. "Why didn't you say your heels were hurting?" Even though I'm usually pretty bold, whenever I'm around Steve, I turn into a shy little girl. I whispered, I was too embarrassed. Steve set me down in the passenger seat and walked straight to the trunk, pulling out a pair of flat shoes. I was stunned. Where did those come from? Steve casually held the shoes in one hand and smiled. Shouldn't a boyfriend's trunk be prepared with everything his girlfriend might need? I bit my lip. Steve really was too perfect. He knelt down, took off my high heels, and was about to put the flats on for me. I quickly bent down to stop him. "Steve, you can't do that." Steve gently patted my hand. Sit still. I had no choice but to sit up straight and let Steve change my shoes. Olivia's feet are beautiful. Very cute. Steve held my foot and praised me softly, his voice so sincere. I felt shy and quickly joked, Steve, if you keep complimenting me, I might just fall in love with you. Steve looked up, his eyes meeting mine. Even in the dim evening light, his eyes were as gentle as a deep pool of water. He said, I'd be so lucky. I froze, my heart skipping a beat. This was the umpteenth time Steve had made my heart flutter for no reason. I didn't know if he was just too deep in character, or if I was. My nose tingled. I took a small sniff and quickly said, Steve, you're too kind. Steve was about to say something else, but a man's voice interrupted from behind us. Well, look at our Steve, playing the romantic hero. Changing his girlfriend's shoes himself. Steve stood up, helped me out of the passenger seat, and then introduced the man walking toward us. Ryan, a friend of mine. Ryan walked right past Steve and extended his hand to me, winking with a smile. Nice to meet you, sis. I'm Ryan. Steve's friends were undoubtedly rich and powerful. I quickly extended my hand. I'm Olivia. Nice to meet you. After we shook hands, Ryan suddenly laughed and slung an arm around Steve's shoulder. Well done. Where did you find someone so interesting? Steve smiled. I looked with my heart. Ryan's expression changed instantly. He playfully punched Steve. Look at you, mister. Smooth talker, showing off. Steve led me into a private room. Soon, several more people arrived, and Steve introduced me to each of them. I stood by his side, greeting everyone. What was going on? It felt like my boyfriend was introducing me to his entire friend group. Steve really was too thorough. Even his acting was completely immersive. The atmosphere was pretty good until a girl with a very edgy style arrived and ruined the mood. Steve, this is the girlfriend you found? You'd choose someone like her over me? The room fell silent. Everyone had an expression on their face like they were watching a show, clearly used to this kind of scene. Steve sat next to me, leaning back against the sofa. His arm was stretched out along the back, and I was nestled right in his embrace. It was a very protective, possessive gesture. His voice changed, turning a bit cold. Someone like what? In my eyes, Olivia is the best. What does anyone else have to do with it? I suddenly realized something. Steve seemed to have a clear line. When he was with me, he was always gentle and considerate. But with others, he was cold and distant. I suddenly wanted to turn around and see if my theory was right. So, I did. I turned my head, and the moment my eyes met Steve's, his icy gaze instantly thawed. He looked at me with such softness, reaching out to stroke my hair. Don't mind her. I like you just the way you are. My heart was struck. A feeling I couldn't control surged through me, unstoppable. I sniffled and smiled at him. But inside, a storm was raging. Because I knew, with absolute clarity, that Steve and I were from different worlds. And I didn't understand where the overwhelming joy I saw in his eyes for me came from. I turned back around, biting my lip hard. The girl who had been so arrogant just moments before was now red-faced because of Steve's words. She stood there, clenching her fists, staring at me with a look of confusion and humiliation. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore and ran out, crying. Steve, I hate you. Ryan chased after her. Lily, don't run off like that. So, her name was Lily. She was from Steve's world. Steve took my hand and stood up, saying to the others, it's getting late. We're heading out. I quickly smiled and said goodbye to everyone. On the way back, I asked cheerfully, so, Steve, how was my performance today? Steve, while driving, said, excellent. I clutched my chest in relief. Good. Got to be worth that 15 grand you're paying me. Steve smiled, pulled out his black card, and handed it to me. Excellent performance. Steve wants to hire you for the year. I stared at the gleaming black card in front of me, my eyes wide. I wanted to grab it and caress it, but I didn't have my card reader with me today. I touched it regretfully. The smell of money. It's so intoxicating. Then I pouted. What a shame. I didn't bring my card reader today. Maybe it was that thought that popped into my head earlier, but I found myself testing the waters. Steve, you still want to hire me? Aren't you looking for a real girlfriend? I am. I'm looking right now. I pouted. Then why are you still hiring me? I didn't even realize the disappointment in my own voice as I said it. Steve held the steering wheel, turning it as he glanced at me with a smile. Are you angry? Then, his tone suddenly deepened. When I was younger, I fell for someone. But when I finally worked up the courage to confess, she vanished without a trace. I only recently found her, but I don't know how to make her fall for me. So, I'm waiting. Do you have any good ideas, Olivia? My earlier disappointment vanished, replaced by a thirst for gossip. I immediately pointed at Steve. With your looks, your style, your charisma, your money. I think you should just go for it. I guarantee that one that got away of yours will be so mesmerized she won't know what hit her. She'll surrender immediately. Steve burst out laughing. So, Olivia, do you know what hit you? Why was he turning this on me? I'm such a sucker for a handsome face, you don't even need to show off your charm. I'd pounce on you in a heartbeat. But I couldn't say what I was thinking. I had to hold back. I quickly said, fawning. Of course, of course. But I would never dare to dream of someone like you, Steve. Steve asked, confused, what's wrong with me? I pointed at him, then at myself, and threw my hands up in a helpless gesture. We're from two different worlds. One from the slums, the other from a palace. We're just not on the same path. Steve's expression darkened. He stared ahead, his eyes unreadable. The atmosphere suddenly turned cold. I didn't get it. Did I say something wrong? I jumped out of the car and waved goodbye to Steve. He looked at me, as if he wanted to say something but couldn't. I stood outside the car, tilting my head and blinking. Is there anything else, Steve? Steve seemed to have made up his mind. He closed his eyes for a second, then said to me, Olivia, I only bring people I like home to meet my friends. Before I could react, he revved the engine and sped off, leaving me standing under the streetlight, confused. I only bring people I like home to meet my friends. What did that even mean? Steve couldn't possibly like me, right? I have no memory of ever meeting him when we were kids. He must have lost his mind. But what if I'm starting to like him? Tough luck. You know who you are. Drowning in debt. A total mess. And you want to reach for the stars? Get real. Home. Sleep. Hello, who is this? I mumbled into the phone, half asleep. Olivia, when are you going to pay up? If you don't pay soon, we're coming to wreck your place. The fog in my head instantly cleared. The debt collectors again. I immediately put on a subservient smile. Sir, I'll pay as soon as I get the money. Just give me a few more days. How many days? 10 days. 10 days, okay? I whispered into the phone, holding my breath. The person on the other end spat. If it's not here in 10 days, we're coming. The line went dead with a click. I tossed the phone onto the bed, rolled over, and let out a long, frustrated sigh. Dad, even in death, you won't give me a moment's peace. This is killing me. All I could think about was money. I stared at the ceiling so hard I thought it might crack. I wished it would just collapse and drop a pile of cash on me, knocking me out cold. Looking back, my luck has been pretty terrible these past few years. One minute I'm a pampered rich girl, the next I'm not. All because my dad got greedy, fell into a trap, lost everything, and got taken for a ride by his closest friend. He went bankrupt, fell into debt, and then killed himself, leaving me with this huge mess. I kicked my legs in frustration and screamed at the ceiling. Oh, God, just strike me down. Put me out of my misery. Just as I was about to get up and wash my face, a sharp pain stabbed my stomach. I gritted my teeth and sucked in a sharp breath. When it rains, it pours. And when you have a cold, Aunt Flo comes to visit. I clutched my agonizing stomach and stumbled into the bathroom. My luck is the absolute worst. Just when I need to be making money the most, my period arrives, the kind that always leaves me in too much pain to even get out of bed. I drank some hot water, took a painkiller, and collapsed onto the bed. I woke up hoping it would be better, but my stomach felt like it was being stabbed with needles. The pain was unbearable. I was covered in a cold sweat, my brow furrowed, afraid to move. And of course, at that exact moment, the damn phone rang again. I answered, irritated. I said 10 days. Stop calling. It's me. Steve's voice came through, calm and steady. I gritted my teeth against the pain, my voice a little breathless. Steve, what can I do for you? It was like he had a built-in radar. He asked with concern, Olivia, what's wrong? Are you not feeling well? Waves of sharp pain washed over me. I wanted to curl up into a ball. My voice was weak. My stomach hurts. So if you need anything today, I can't do it. Okay. He hung up quickly. I lay curled up in bed, letting out small whimpers. In this rundown, empty apartment, with no one to care for me, why did I suddenly feel so pathetic? I thought of my heartless mother, who conspired with her lover to swindle my father, then ran off with the money. Aren't all children their mother's precious treasure? Oh, right. Not me. My mom loved her boy toy more. Why were tears rolling down my face so shamelessly? I wiped them away. The pain in my stomach was making me dizzy, almost to the point of passing out. Suddenly, the door burst open. I stared blankly at the doorway. Steve's tall figure appeared, blocking the sunlight. I looked at him through blurry, tear-filled eyes. It's no exaggeration to say that in that moment, he looked like a god. His usually calm and composed face was etched with a rare anxiety. He knelt by my bed and asked gently, Olivia, are you okay? It had been so many years since anyone had asked me if I was okay. I couldn't hold it together anymore. I started crying shamelessly. No, I'm not okay. My stomach is killing me. The words had barely left my mouth when Steve lifted me into his arms. I'm taking you to the hospital. At the hospital, I was on an 4-drip, eating the food Steve had someone deliver. The soup was delicious, so much better than the instant noodles I usually make. Steve sat beside me and asked softly, feeling better? Does it still hurt? I hadn't heard such a concerned voice in years. For some reason, my nose started to tingle, and tears welled up again. I sniffled and asked, Steve, why are you being so nice to me? Steve smiled and stroked my head. Because you're my girlfriend. But I'm just tired. It's fake. I like you, Olivia. Steve looked into my eyes and said it directly. I froze, completely stunned. After a long moment, I finally managed a laugh and patted his shoulder. Steve, you can't be serious. Steve. Before I could finish, Steve silenced me with a firm kiss. His light, clean scent filled my senses. The heat from his lips was a feverish wave that washed over me, flooding every cell in my body. He kissed me until I was dizzy, until I forgot to resist. I was in a daze until he finally pulled away. I stared at him, my mind slowly coming back into focus. He cupped my face, his breathing slightly ragged, and repeated what he had said before. Olivia, the person I've liked for all these years is you. You were right. I shouldn't be so timid. I should just be direct about how I feel. Olivia, will you be my girlfriend? Steve looked at me with a sincere, almost pleading expression. His eyes pierced my heart, and for a moment, I desperately wanted to say yes. Even a heart of steel would soften in the face of someone as gentle as Steve. I admit, I was starting to fall for him. But the vast difference in our realities was a chasm between us, forcing me to stay clear-headed. I was silent for a moment, then managed a bitter smile. I dodged the question. Steve, let me think about it, okay? Steve, thinking he had a chance, said excitedly, okay, I won't push you. Just think about how you feel about me. I nodded, wanting to crack a joke to ease the awkward tension, but I couldn't bring myself to say a word. While Steve was out of the room, I slipped out of the hospital. I couldn't face him. I was afraid I wouldn't be able to hold back, that I'd just give in and say yes. I went home, quickly packed my things, and moved to a new place. And I blocked Steve's number. We were from different worlds. We never should have crossed paths in the first place. All these years of struggling have taught me to be realistic. But without Steve's easy money, I was once again in a tight spot. I started working multiple jobs, day and night, taking every opportunity one could to earn money. I was so exhausted that when I got home, I didn't even notice the debt collectors waiting for me at my door. Olivia, when are you going to pay up? A harsh shout startled me awake. I didn't hesitate, I turned and ran. The men behind me cursed as they chased after me. Olivia. I never expected to see Steve suddenly appear in front of me, especially not when I was in such a mess. Seeing the men about to catch up, I yelled at Steve, "Run!" But Steve didn't listen. Instead, he ran past me and started fighting them, kicking them to the ground before grabbing my hand and pulling me away. He held my wrist tightly, running without looking back. In that moment, a familiar memory suddenly surfaced. Another alley, me pulling a boy, running for our lives. Could that boy have been Steve? We ran until we were both out of breath, collapsing against a wall. I clutched my stomach and burst out laughing, a sound so loud it could have echoed through the whole alley. I reached out and patted Steve's shoulder. Steve, have we done this before? Me pulling you, running? Steve looked at me, unsurprised. You remember? He couldn't help but hug me, laughing like a child. You finally remember. I tilted my head and smiled. Yeah. Sorry about that. I forgot about you. Steve looked a little shy. It's not your fault. I've changed a lot. It was true. I couldn't connect the handsome, wealthy Steve in front of me with the chubby, quiet boy from my memory. In middle school, I was still a carefree, rich girl, full of life and laughter. Walking home from school one day, I passed an alley where a chubby high school-looking boy with glasses was being cornered and bullied. He just kept his head down, not saying a word, letting them yell at him. I got mad instantly. I pointed at them and started yelling, then pulled out my phone to call the police. They panicked. I took my chance, pushed past them, grabbed the boy's hand, and ran. After that, I only saw him a few more times. He'd be crouching on the ground, feeding stray cats. I'd say hi and pet the cats with him, but we never introduced ourselves. Right after I started high school, my family's business went bankrupt. I left the city and never saw him again. That one act of chivalry, that one moment of standing up for him, was enough for Steve to remember me for all these years. Steve really is a loyal guy, to remember me after so long. I looked him over, still amazed at the transformation. He must have seen the confusion in my eyes, because he quickly explained, in middle school, my parents died in a plane crash. I was in a really bad place, so I stopped talking and started eating my feelings. That's how I got like that. Later, I lost the weight. I wanted to start fresh, to reintroduce myself to you, but you were gone. I scratched my head, embarrassed. My family went bankrupt. My mom ran off with her lover and all the money, and my dad jumped. I ran away to escape the debt. Steve's eyes were full of sympathy. He reached out and stroked my head. Olivia, you've been through so much. The moment he said that, my eyes welled up. It was the first time anyone had ever stroked my head and told me I'd had it hard. I burst into tears, unable to hold it in any longer. Steve panicked, trying to comfort me, wiping away my tears. Olivia, don't cry. Did I say something wrong? Or do you not like me? You don't want to see me? Is it because? I pulled him toward me and silenced him with a kiss. Steve's eyes widened in surprise, but a second later, he took control, cupping my face and kissing me back fiercely. I pulled away, breathless, and answered him. I do like you, Steve. I really do. But. No buts, Olivia. My life isn't as glamorous as you think. It's full of its own dangers. I have cousins who are always trying to take over the company, shareholders who are constantly fighting. And there are always rival companies competing with me. I'm just as careful, just as cautious, walking on thin ice every day. We're not so different, you and I. So, are you brave enough? I understood what he was saying. Are you brave enough to step into my world? Are you brave enough to face the wolves in my life? I suddenly smiled. I didn't want to hide my feelings anymore. Without hesitation, I answered him, I am. The gloomy sky suddenly opened up, and rain started to fall, soaking us both. He lifted me onto his back and started walking forward, one step at a time. Through the sound of the rain, I heard him say, from now on, whatever storms come our way, we'll face them together. I'll carry you. We'll face it all together. I gently bit his ear. Okay. To hell with the impassable chasm. To hell with not being worthy. When you love someone, you have to follow your heart. Steve's epilogue. When I found out the person Gina had hired to spy on me was Olivia, I was so happy I almost went crazy. You have no idea how long I've been looking for her. Everyone thinks that because I'm 28 and have never been in a relationship, I'm a total workaholic. That's not it. There's a girl I like. In middle school, my parents died in a plane crash. I was consumed by grief. I stopped talking, and binge eating became my only outlet. I let myself go and became a fat kid. Because of that, my quiet personality and large size made a lot of people dislike me. It didn't matter that I came from a wealthy family, they still targeted me. For a long time, I was lost in my own world. Even when people bullied me, I couldn't be bothered to fight back. But one day, a girl suddenly appeared and stopped them. The way she puffed up her chest, pretending to be tougher than she was, caught my eye immediately. She actually called the police and then grabbed my hand, and we ran. She grabbed my hand. As I dragged my heavy body, panting, behind her, for the first time, I regretted being so fat. I must have looked so unappealing. But she didn't seem to care at all. She even told me not to let people bully me anymore, that I had to learn to fight back, otherwise, what was the point of being so big? I thought she was so refreshingly direct. I loved it. It had been so long since someone so vibrant and full of life had spoken to me like that. My grandparents, afraid of upsetting me, were always so careful around me. But I knew they were just as sad. Olivia was like a ray of sunshine piercing through the fog and into my heart. Her bright smile dazzled me, and I suddenly felt like I couldn't go on like this anymore. So, I started to change. I lost weight. I started talking to people. I saw her a few more times when I was feeding the stray cats. I thought, just wait a little longer. When I'm thinner, when I'm better, I'll go and properly introduce myself to her. But she never walked down that alley again. I never saw her again. Later, I found out what happened. Her family's business had failed. So, I started looking for her. I thought, a young girl like her, all alone, must be going through so much hardship. I never thought the search would take so many years. So, when she appeared in front of me again, I was so happy I couldn't sleep for days. I had to find a way to keep her, to make sure her future would be as bright as her past should have been. I wanted to give her a home. But I didn't dare to just tell her that I'd liked her for years. So, I paid her to be my fake girlfriend. I introduced her to my family, my friends, letting her step into my world, bit by bit. I wanted to tell everyone that I liked her. Even if she was still cluelessly thinking of me as just her boss. I did my best to show her my gentle and caring side, hoping to win even a little bit of her affection. I had gone through all this trouble, planning to play the long game with her. But then she told me that if you like someone, you should just be direct. Fine. I'll be direct. But it seemed to scare her. I had seen it several times, she had feelings for me, too. But she was so good at hiding them. It turned out she thought the gap between us was too big, an insurmountable chasm. In that moment, my heart ached. My poor girl must have suffered so much to become so sensitive. I couldn't wait any longer. I didn't want to slowly lure her into my gentle trap. I wanted her in my arms, right now. I wanted to solve all her problems. All she had to do was be happy, to live a carefree life forever. But she ran away. It took me several more days to find her. And I found her being chased by debt collectors. In that moment, I was furious. Why would they torment a young woman like that? I felt a little resentment toward her mother, and even her deceased father. Their daughter was not doing well at all. I charged in, beat those guys up, and ran with her. I told her that I wasn't as untouchable, as out of reach as she thought. That my world was perhaps even more dangerous than hers. I asked her if she was brave enough to come into my world and take a look. The moment she said yes, I felt like I could cry. I silently promised her that I absolutely would, protect her. So she could live a life without worry. Thank God Olivia liked me too. She finally opened her closed-off heart and let me in. And now that I'm in, I'm never leaving. I want to love Olivia until we're old, to use everything I have to love her, to shelter her from the wind and rain. A good girl should never have to suffer. She deserves a lifetime of romance from the one who loves her.